Welcome to Episode 92, Spotlight, Identifier Management, also known as Control IA-4. Identifiers are the foundation of every access decision. They tell the system who or what is acting before any permission or authentication can occur. Without unique identifiers, controls such as least privilege, logging, and auditing lose meaning because actions blur together. IA-4 ensures that each subject, human, service, or device has a distinct and traceable identity that persists over time. In practice, identifier management is about precision and permanence. A reliable identifier turns a login into a person, a process, or a system you can hold accountable. Stability begins with naming. Building on that idea, each subject must have one unique identifier that remains permanent for its lifetime. This avoids confusion when people change jobs, roles, or systems. A user who transfers departments should keep the same identity record so audit trails remain intact. Likewise, a device or service account retains its unique identifier even if moved to a different function. For example, if an engineer named Robin Lee changes roles 3 times, her identifier, say U12345, should not reset. Reassigning identifiers breaks accountability and corrupts logs. Permanence provides continuity, ensuring history remains accurate no matter how structure evolves. From there, design distinct patterns for human and non-human identifiers so systems can distinguish them easily. Human identifiers often follow a readable convention, while non-human identifiers, like applications, bots, or network devices, can use structured prefixes or numeric ranges. For instance, human IDs might follow H-, while service accounts use S-. These distinctions simplify monitoring, policy enforcement, and analytics. When alerts show activity from a service prefix in an unexpected context, administrators immediately know where to look. Separate patterns prevent mistaken treatment of automated identities as people or vice versa. Clarity in design keeps automation manageable and security rules enforceable. Avoid reusing or recycling identifiers under any circumstance. Once issued, an identifier becomes part of the permanent audit record, linked to activities that cannot be erased. Reassigning that identifier to a new person or system merges 2 histories into one, destroying traceability. Imagine discovering an audit log where a purchase approval appears under an identifier now belonging to someone else. It is impossible to prove who acted. Instead, retire identifiers permanently when no longer needed. Maintain a reserved list of retired values to prevent accidental reuse. This small administrative habit safeguards the integrity of every past event. Naming standards and reserved prefixes further organize the identifier landscape. A defined format length, allowable characters, and prefix meaning creates predictability across directories and applications. Prefixes can distinguish internal users from partners, test systems from production, or cloud tenants from on-premises accounts. For example, INT might signal internal staff, while EXT labels partner accounts. Enforcing these patterns through provisioning tools ensures consistency. Reserved prefixes also prevent naming collisions when systems integrate or synchronize. Well-structured identifiers simplify reporting, searching, and troubleshooting. In short, disciplined naming converts identity chaos into order, supporting both usability and governance. Before issuing any identifier, perform proofing to verify that the subject truly exists and is eligible. Proofing connects the digital label to a real, verified record, an employee, contract, or asset. For people, this means confirming identity through hiring records or trusted documents. For devices, it involves asset registration and serial verification. A brief scenario illustrates why. Creating a user ID for a consultant before background checks complete creates a ghost entry that may linger long after rejection. Issuing identifiers only after proofing ensures that every identity begins authentic and traceable. Trust in data starts at creation. Once verified, bind identifiers to their corresponding records in authoritative systems. The link between the unique identifier and the underlying person, device, or process must be stored in a directory or identity registry. That binding becomes the reference for authentication, authorization, and auditing. For example, the HR system provides the canonical record for employees, while the configuration management database anchors device identities. Synchronization keeps these sources aligned. Binding prevents duplicate identities from sprouting in isolation. When questions arise, who performed this action, the binding provides an immediate, authoritative answer. It turns abstract ID strings into recognizable entities with context and ownership. Over time, manage merges, splits, and aliases with care so identifier relationships stay clear. Merges happen when duplicate records for the same person or device are discovered. Splits occur when one record mistakenly contains data from two entities. Each event must generate a mapping entry that preserves lineage. Aliases, such as temporary project IDs or email handles, must always reference the primary identifier. For example, if two contractor records combine into one, log the retired ID as merged and redirect any references. This prevents orphan data and keeps every action tied to its rightful owner, even after structural cleanup. When decommissioning identifiers, retire them cleanly to avoid collisions. Mark them inactive, record the retirement date, and remove authentication bindings. Do not delete identifiers from logs or directories until retention policies allow. For systems that cannot purge cleanly, flag old IDs as reserved and block reuse. Imagine a production system where an old server ID is recycled for a new machine. Suddenly, logs appear to show the old device alive again. Decommissioning discipline prevents that confusion. Retirement is as important as issuance. It closes the lifecycle with integrity and protects the clarity of audit trails. Protect directories and identity stores from enumeration attacks that exploit predictable identifiers. Attackers often attempt to guess usernames by pattern and measure responses. Counter this by rate-limiting login attempts, masking error messages, and using non-sequential or salted identifiers where practical. For public-facing systems, never expose full user lists or detailed error responses like username not found. For instance, responding simply with invalid credentials hides whether the username exists. Enumeration defense preserves privacy and reduces the starting point for brute force attacks. A well-designed directory balances user convenience with adversary resistance. Evidence of good identifier management includes issuance logs, binding mappings, and decommissioning records. Logs should show when and by whom each ID was created, verified, and retired. Mappings link identifiers to authoritative records and track changes over time. For example, auditors should be able to retrieve a file showing that ID int 0347 was issued to a specific employee on a given date and retired 2 years later. Such evidence proves that identity practices are consistent, controlled, and repeatable. Documentation of lifecycle events transforms routine record-keeping into compliance assurance. In IA-4, proof equals professionalism. Exceptions inevitably occur, such as temporary generic IDs for training or test purposes, but these must be documented and time-limited. Approval records should specify justification, scope, and expiration. Compensating safeguards, like network isolation or extra monitoring, mitigate risk until replacement with proper identifiers. For instance, a shared classroom account might exist for 1 week with all activity logged and auto-expiry configured. Uncontrolled generics destroy traceability, while controlled exceptions demonstrate maturity. Visibility and expiration separate disciplined deviation from negligence. Every temporary identity should end on schedule, leaving no ghost accounts behind. Metrics provide insight into the health of identifier management. Track duplicates discovered, collisions prevented, orphaned IDs resolved, and issuance to proofing time. Decreasing duplicates shows better verification. Faster decommissioning indicates cleaner hygiene. Trends also reveal process weaknesses. Spikes in orphaned IDs may signal delays in HR or asset updates. Present metrics to leadership as indicators of identity quality, not just compliance counts. Numbers tell whether identity foundations are solid or drifting. When identifiers are stable and accurate, every other access control measure inherits that strength. In closing, stable identity creates stable policy. IA-4 reminds us that without trustworthy identifiers, the entire security framework rests on sand. By ensuring uniqueness, permanence, and binding to verified records, organizations make authentication meaningful and authorization enforceable. Careful naming, disciplined retirement, and protection against enumeration transform identifiers from mere strings into pillars of accountability. When each identity is known, proven, and permanent, every log, audit, and access decision stands on firm ground. Stability at this level is not glamorous, but it is the quiet structure that makes all other security work. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.